programs and students inside without bothering any of bearing walls. We have that ability. So all the outside are bearing walls and have beauty to them. And they blend in with the hills that we have around here. It was different, and I held my breath the night that the board had to accept the kind of construction, because I didn't know. This is a conservative area.
Yeah, there was a lot riding, I can assure you.
Mm-hmm.
You've been, pardon me, you've been very active too in civic work. You've never backed off on doing your part in civic work. Would you want to touch on that just a little bit?
Well, I believe that when I got out, I said, well, I was retired 8 years ago. And I said, I'll retire properly and with dignity. And at that time, the United Way asked that I help a little by being campaign chairman. And I took that position for 4 years, and they were well organized and on their way. Then I got an idea for the Y and broached the board of directors at the Y on the concept of the 400 Club and the Silver Triumph Club, and lo and behold, I was a member of the board of directors there and have been for the last 2.5 years. I have a feeling that if you believe in a community strong enough, you should be willing to share not only your financial wealth, but some of your physical well-being and working toward the things that eventually down the pike will benefit the community. The things that we have worked for at United Way and at the YMCA, if you look at the composition of the board, have not been for the board members primarily, but for their children and grandchildren, and in the case of one individual, for his great-grandchildren. I think that we do things knowing that the community will be better for it if down the pike, as I would say, we had a strong YMCA or a strong United Way or strong programs external to what we get in the public schools. It's been a two-way venture, if I might, where I do something, the students do something, and so we do it for each other. And I do something, the parents do something, and we do it for each other and for their children who will benefit from it. We're going to have an outstanding Y one of these days. We have a good Y now, but we lack facilities.
Well, with the population growth, everything else coming in, years ago everything was going out.
Right.
But now it's reversing. It's coming back in or staying in. As you said to start with, you're going to do something for your students to where they didn't have to leave. They could stay here.
Right.
And we're going to have, I say we as a community are going to have to do something to provide these facilities for these young people that's, as you say, down the pike.
If we don't, we're going to rue the day, because if they are too idle, they're going to get into some other kinds of trouble.
And there's no need to lose these good minds into another community or another city when we need them right here to grow.
That's right. That's right. And it comes back to help you. After all, the more people you retain and the more people who get better jobs, then the higher the tax base. And so the schools reap that way. But it's been a good challenge. And you know, for a Northern to say that, Bob, the most ironic things, when you're a senior in college, you fill out questionnaires on what you want to do and where you want to go. And when I was a senior, I filled out a questionnaire and it said, what kind of community? And I put down nothing under 500,000 population. Since I got out of my undergraduate college, I haven't been in a community over 50,000. And you'll be stretching it to get that many. I guess you get a feeling, having lived in among tall buildings and a lot of people hurrying and scurrying, you get a feeling that you would like to get some peace and quiet. And communities such as the Wilkesboroughs or Wilkes County, which is a broad community now, sort of gives one a very satisfying feeling when you're a member of that community. I know of no place that I would rather be than Wilkes County, and I've been quite a few places. And I just feel that we have no gripe with what we get for our money here, barring none. We get our money's worth, whether it's in fire protection or police protection or recreation or education, we get our money's worth. If they don't believe that, move to some other community where it has a high tax base and see what you get. And I think we're going to see that with some people who either come in or go out. They'll tell you the difference between what they got for their money. I just feel that we're very fortunate here, and we have ideal climate. Now we'll bellyache about the heat in the summer and the cold in the winter, but we'd bellyache anyway. But I have a feeling that by and large most people wouldn't trade it.
Well, as you just said about go out and see some other community, but if some of the people that bellyache about the climate should go out into other areas of the world and then make up their minds, they would be very happy to come back to this area here for our climate and atmosphere.
They certainly would.
From all things considered, the bottom line I'm saying is education. If we can educate these young people to know more about the world, their world, we'll say, down the road, the better off anybody in all communities would be, wouldn't it? It's education.
Yes, and I feel sorry, some of the legacy we're leaving our children and grandchildren right now. I mean, the indebtedness of the higher groups, mostly federal. All we can do is prepare them to take their stance. We were fortunate growing up, my particular age group, because anytime we did something, we earned 5 cents more per hour or something like that. And that was an improvement. We started at ground zero and rose. Most of these youngsters coming in now are starting way up here, and there isn't any place to go up further, and they're going to be slipping. And in that respect, we've got to teach them how to face the world and face the things that are happening. We've made a mess of it. I'll say that honestly. My generation has made a mess of it.
I've been there too.
Right. And that's why I have this strong feeling. You know, they say that youngsters don't want discipline. I don't believe that one iota. As long as you discipline them fairly, you can do it, and they'll listen. Parents complain about them throwing clothes all over and don't pick up this and don't do that. I'll agree that they don't. But I think that if there was some mode that was established whereby they would do their training program and do their reading program for schools and the like, I think that the youngsters would fall in line. They would not be doing the things that they do. Now, I realize that my generation didn't have all of the outside things to attract them to going astray. I'll admit that. And we couldn't have afforded it if they were present. That was another thing. But I think it behooves all of us in the state of Wilkes, regardless of our age, our background, financial background, as well as educational background, to do the most that we can to promote a good environment for these youngsters in which to study. And they'll study. Now, they'll study in different ways from what we studied, through the computers, through audiovisual and the like. Yes, they'll do that, but they'll study because they don't want to be left behind. They want to have the things that takes money to afford to have. So I have a feeling that
Well, that's the changing times. If you don't go with it, you will be left behind, isn't it? If you stop for one day, you're what, a week, 2 months behind?
you're way behind and
Way behind.
never catch up. But there's a strong feeling for youngsters today. I appreciate them. I'm finding that they're more respectful around me, at least, when I go through a door, let's say at the YMCA. They don't try to rush through ahead of me. I've had them open the door for me, and I will say 15, 20 years ago, nobody would do that.
Well, don't you think, too, respect begets respect?
Yes,
You have respect for these people.
You have to honor them.
And these young people are not stupid in the sense of the word. They can see through you in a heartbeat.
No way. And they'll watch for you to make a play in a situation that you'd be unfair. And as long as you're fair, they'll back you to the teeth. But boy, if you are not fair, they'll really be all over you like a tin.
Well, from what little life I've lived, I never did like a double standard. And it applies then, it applies now. And the young people are no different than what I was when I was growing up. They just do things a little different, I guess, in the sense of the word. But the more it changes, the more it remains the same of the old-timey ways.
Now, I don't call it double standard if you take each case individually, because there are some background.
But what I'm saying
cases.
is, say for instance, I try to discipline one of my children, but yet I go and do the right opposite, and they look at me so, well, if you do the opposite of what you're telling me, that's double standard. That's what I refer to. No, you have to take each child individually on a lot of things, because there's no two cases the same.
That's correct.
But to show respect to the young people, or to anybody, as far as that goes, you'll get respect.
Oh, yes.
And if you don't, that's their problem.
You got to dress them properly, and by doing so, they know whether you're respecting them.
Dr. Thompson, I certainly appreciate you taking your time to come here and talk to us and give us this privileged tape to where we can keep here at the college and for future generations. Is there anything else that you can think of that you might want to add as we'll call a wrap-up or thing like that at this time? The future outlook of things.
Of course, if I'm not clairvoyant, and so I can't tell you what's down the road 10 or 12 years from now. Probably I wouldn't like it if I could. But I think that as long as we have a feeling for a community, a strong feeling of worth for an individual as well as a community, and that we put our efforts and our monies where our mouths are, I think that we will have a very strong state of Wilkes. And I'm not saying to let the rest of the people go by or anything else, but I think we ought to stay at home doing things which are necessary for our particular people to benefit. We do those first, then we branch out and worry about what's happening in the environs beyond us. But I have a strong feeling that we'll be surviving many years down the pike, so to speak, and we'll be all right one of these days. We won't be looked at the figure of being the M&M capital of the world and the like. I mean, we'll have more to offer because we have a good commodity here, and that is youth. Us oldsters will